Rinder Talk.
Talk Radio's Common Sense Weekend is here.
Drive home with Rob Rinder.
Live, loud, listen.
Rinder Talk.
Don't get nicked listening to anything else.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. Now it's time for us to go stateside with our postcard from America with Prof. JC. That's Professor John Christopher Buer, White House correspondent at Real Political News. Prof. JC, there's a lot to get through. It's 1 year of the Biden presidency. His approval ratings are pretty much tanked. And thinking of tanks, there are 100,000 Russian troops on the border of the Ukraine. Some say that, well, to say the very least, in a press conference that President Biden gave, he gave Russia, mixed messages, to say the very least, about his feelings of that invasion, which have frankly been a potential green light for Russia to invade the country. They appear to be corrected today by Secretary of State Blinken. And the response of Sergei Lavrov, the foreign secretary of Russia, has been to state very categorically, so long as Ukraine doesn't try to become a member of NATO, we will not invade. But this all started because of a mixed message and because of the absence of clarity and, frankly, seemingly to us over here and to some over there, the intellectual strength and acuity of the president. That's right? Prof. JC?
You're asking me a question, good friend.
There you are. Well, I've put it to you as a closed question. Is it right that the president gave mixed messages, which was not ideal? That what you want is a president who's absolutely clear, and the presidents of the past who have been most successful have been ones that have been bottom line presidents, and that's not what Biden did, or President Biden did in the press conference he gave when talking about Russia, which has caused perhaps the brinkmanship that we're in now.
Well, the trials and tribulations of a 2-hour press conference. I think we were all holding our breaths and hoping that the president did well. And he did make a bit of a diplo-speak, indelicate comment, not really defining the difference between incursion and invasion. And I'm sure everyone of your relatives, and you've been doing a remarkable piece, by the way, I've been watching it, knew the difference between Hitler's invasion of Poland. It was not an incursion. And I think it's very clear to the president that Putin is not telling the truth. He's terrified. And if you can see this, I think this is why he's terrified. You see all those countries there on the border of Russia, except for Finland, Sweden, and Bosnia-Herzegovina, they're all now members of NATO. Right. And it's terrifying Putin that not only are they so close to Russia, but they are democratic countries and they're ruled democratically. And he's terrified that his people may get the wrong impression of what he's doing
they've been democratic and on the border for a significant period of time, and they certainly don't pose any invasion risk to Russia's borders. And the extent to which that soft power you're talking about, the fact that he's surrounded by democracies and the effect that will have on the population to perhaps buy into democracy, one thinks perhaps and reflects that perhaps would have happened by now, not least, and amongst other things, the West is very dependent, Germany in particular, on the energy that Russia provides. Is that right? Or is this, frankly, part of the expansionist adventure that Putin's always had in the back of his mind? He's always considered the Ukraine to be a province of Russia. And unless you have a leader that's categorical and clear as could possibly be the case, that we will not tolerate any incursion or invasion into Ukraine, unless you have that strength, the reality is Putin's going to do what Putin's going to do.
Yes, and in fact, his goal is to become I would say that the combination, the amorphous, the connection between Tsar Nicholas II and Joseph Stalin. That's who he would like to be. That's his image of who he is. And I think by saying that I'm not going to invade, he already has invaded Crimea,
right?
Georgia. Let's face it, he's done it. He's done it before. And no matter what he says or does, we wait and see. And the president must be strong. The NATO allies must be strong. Your prime minister has said some very tough stuff, that this would be basically a disaster for the world. And I think NATO needs to stand together because, as you said, Russia holds the energy source to Europe through its gas and through its oil pipelines.
Mm-hmm. Prof. JC, some people describe this as an issue of communication, and then listening to me speak, they roll their eyes and shrug their shoulders and say it's not communication, it's policy. But communication is everything. I know you're always keen to go back in history, given your long-standing, to say the very least, many decades long involvement in American politics, and you'll be aware that, for instance, the Falklands War here partly happened because we gave the impression to Galtieri through our Foreign Office at that time that we would do nothing in the event that the Argentinians were to invade the Falkland Islands. Some would argue that the Second World War began when we failed to take action and to give a clear and unequivocal bottom line to Hitler when he invaded Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland as it was called. And many would argue, whatever your view of his economic program, that it was the strength and clarity of the message, for example, from Ronald Reagan about the bottom lines during the course of the Cold War and spending, and his clarity on it being an evil empire, which stopped or at least thwarted Soviet expansionism. That is a clear president with a clear message, with an unequivocal point of view. Do you think President Biden is able to express that? Listening and watching that press conference, it didn't really give many people confidence.
No, it did not. And Ronald Reagan, who I'm appreciating in retrospect much more than I did when I was following him live. Remember what he said: "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, and maybe some thought Reagan was a bit of a madman, that he tore down the wall. The other thing is, if I may, I'm not avoiding your question, mm-hmm. like most do. If you remember, in October of 1982, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962,
right.
We had the Cuban Missile Crisis when John Kennedy put an embargo around Cuba, but he gave Khrushchev a way out. He gave him a back door, and it was a private, and it was never to be revealed. But he said, "We'll take our missiles out of Turkey if you remove your ships and your missiles." And they did, and it saved the world from a nuclear holocaust, which I'm afraid we need to have smart and intelligent and strong minds and strong wills involved now to save this world from another nuclear holocaust.
Well, on that point of strong minds, I think everybody listening to this would agree. And thinking about, or going back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, exactly as you described, the deal that the Russians want seemingly is for the Ukraine to be assured that they're not going to sign up to and join NATO. All very well, but half their country, some people would argue, many, me included, has been occupied by Russia. But it's a strong mind that's a problem. Looking at a number of the opinion polls, as we come up to a year of President Biden's presidency and coming close to the midterms, many people don't think that this is a man of strength of mind, to say the very least. And it seems, and you can perhaps help us understand why, that his approval ratings are, well, some of the worst that have ever been seen for a presidency at this stage of his presidency.
Well, I'm not going to be an apologist for our president. I will hold every politician's feet to the fire, but he did inherit quite a deal, and he inherited quite a mess from the former guy, as we call him. And he's done some good things. The economy's gotten better. He's done some remarkable COVID relief. It needs to do more. The Omicron has been an additional kick in the you-know-what to him. And the fact is that you cannot run a country by message. You have to have the policy, and it has to be a clear, strong policy. And domestic politics went too far to the left, perhaps, and he needs to move more to the center. And of all people on this planet who knows exactly, maybe even more than you and I do, that this is in fact a political year. We are in the midterms, is Vladimir Putin. Right. He knew all about the politics and the election year of 2016 and 2020, and he knows all about it now. And his point to disrupt democratic countries like ours, meaning you and mine and NATO and the United States, is his main goal, so he can then become the number one kid on the block, Nikolai and Stalin combined.
Prof. JC, if you were advising President Biden, well, I mean, you can't change the past, but would you have suggested to him it was in his political interests to have done that 2-hour press conference? Why did they do it? A lot of us from here were scratching our heads, wondering, somebody that clearly wasn't up to it. That's not his thing to say the very kindest thing. Why did they do it? Why would have his advisors risked him in that way?
I haven't a clue, but here's what I know about Joe Biden. He's a tough, strong guy. Mm-hmm. He's a hard scrabble guy from Pennsylvania. And he had to show, and people have been saying, oh, he's not strong enough. He's not powerful enough. He can't make it. He can't last up there. And you know what he did? He went and said, God darn it, I'll show you how tough I am. I'm going to do a 2-hour press conference. Now, it may not have inured to his benefit, but because exactly what you are saying, this is exactly why he should have perhaps cut it short. And those who are involved in my world mm-hmm. and former appointees of different administrations are saying, you know, Joe, when you think you're doing good, that, you know, like in comedy, when you're doing well, let them laugh and get off on a joke. And he didn't. He let them off on some real difficult language. And I think that opened the door for some major criticism. And hopefully he's come back quick. But let's see what happens. And all eyes are now on Putin, and Putin is loving it.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with your last comment and your diagnosis, as ever, clear. And you are at the coalface of American politics. Our Professor John Christopher Buer, Prof. JC, White House correspondent for Real Political News. Now, there's breaking news that have just literally come in. Ireland's Premier, Michael Martin, has confirmed that almost all COVID-19 restrictions will be lifted from 6 a.m. on Saturday. The only rules which will remain in place will be face masks, self-isolation after testing positive for the virus, and COVID passes for international travel. As I think of Churchill, this may not be, the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning, perhaps. And it looks like other countries are following suit. Just imagine a world. It's been 2 years of darkness there. Finally, maybe some light coming through as we return back to our cities, back to normalcy, back to a time when people, frankly, were living lives that weren't in the crushing darkness of this virus. Good news as we go into the weekend. I'm Rob Rinder. You're listening to Talk Radio.
Good talk. Hot talk.
Bold talk. Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters